My name's Ray O'Keefe. I'm an alcoholic. Member of the Curie Beach group in Curie Beach, North Carolina. You've all heard of that. It's a barrier island, 8 miles long, half a mile wide, and we have 12 AA meetings a week. Tells you something. We have one on Sunday morning, 11 o'clock, oceanfront, in a grove of oak trees. And up till I looked out this window, it was the most beautiful AA group I've ever seen. But this is spectacular out here, boy. I don't know why you need a meeting. You just sit and look out the window. But then, of course, you wouldn't hear me, so. For those of you who are sitting behind the poles there, I'm 6'3". Curly black hair and startling blue eyes. I've been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous a long time. You can tell by looking at me, I've been doing something for a long, long time. And when I talk at these things, I use the book Alcoholics Anonymous. This one, the blue one. Blue one. Not the red one or green one or some crap from Hazleton Goop and... Nope. Shit from Nebraska or something. That's around about a week. My sponsor gave me this, not this book, but he gave me a book like this. And he said, read the black part there. Don't read in between the black part, he said, because that's where the trouble is. But you read the black part, it has nothing to it. And the black part says that when I am to speak like this, I am to tell you what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. A lot of people get that wrong. They think it says tell what it was like. Well, you don't want to know that, do you? Because it was like what your it was like. It was awful. But what I was like gives me the opportunity to talk about me. I'm sober a long time, but I'm 100% self-absorbed. I don't suppose it ever goes away. Anyhow, I was born, I grew up, at least I got a little taller, in one of the neighborhoods in New York City, in the Bronx. And my neighborhood was rough, and it was tough, and it was Irish. Now, I don't suppose you know about this here in Maine, but they drank in that neighborhood. Oh. You'd actually see people on the streets under the influence of alcohol. Difficult to believe, but true. If you looked where I lived, you'd see a little drinking my mother, the widow O'Keefe, was known to take a drink from time to time. And if the pressure got on, Kitty would go for the light wines and the spirits, and something would fly, usually one of the children. I just found out about 4 years ago I'm from a dysfunctional family. But it's all right. I've talked it over with my inner child. And I got in touch with my emotions and resolved all of the issues. Now that we have that horse shit out of the way, we get on with the good stuff. So I was going through the Catholic school system. Where else would somebody named O'Keefe go to school? I hear people knocking that system in AA. I don't knock it. They were very good to me. They educated me. They were very good. They gave me a good education, free, most of it. And they saved me from going blind, and that's a big item. You're a rotten, miserable bunch, you are. I just throw that out to see what I'm dealing with here. Everywhere I go, I'm in with the trash. I don't understand it. Had a lot of trouble going through those Catholic schools. I got thrown out of high school a number of times. I held the neighborhood record for being thrown out of high school, a record previously established by my brother Billy, who was a very bad alcoholic. And when I was finished with school, high school, or they were finished with me, who knows, I ended up in college. Now, to this moment, I'm really not sure how I ended up in college, but I did. I ended up in college in the state of Vermont, which 50 years ago, in alcoholic terms, was a third world nation. Because there were no bars, you had to sit in restaurants and drink beer out of a bottle, and where I came from, that's not what you did. But in any event, I went up there and I was drinking my way through that. I got very collegiate, and they used to sit around tables and they drink beer out of bottles, and they sang college songs, very dopey songs. And I learned the words to some of those songs, and they wore white shoes in the wintertime. So I got a pair of white shoes. I fit in pretty good. And then I reverted to type, and in a little while I was in trouble at school, I was in trouble at home, I was in trouble with some girl, I was in trouble with some teachers. So I decided I'd solve that problem. I joined the Navy. Got a haircut, joined the Navy. 6 months later, I was on a minesweeper in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and we were blowing up the ocean, and it was raining dead fish on my head. And I thought to myself, this is not it either. There is no happiness here, I thought. I came back from the Navy, undecorated, unhonored, unpromoted, and everything was under control in the neighborhood. My brother Billy was missing from the New York City Police Department. Billy had come out of the Marines and went on to the New York City Police. He had an argument with a man who fell off a roof. And the man lived to identify the Irish cop that threw him off the roof. So Billy went west, and he went in a more peaceful line of work. He went back in the Marine Corps. The government was giving veterans $20 a month $20 a week for 52 weeks. So I signed up. I got a couple of those checks. I gravitated to the local bar. I was planning a life of petty crime with some of my grammar school companions. We had a stolen car ring that we were working on, and I was going to be in an executive capacity. I had one of these clear thoughts that flow through, and I remembered that I had been to college. So I got on a bus and I went back up there, and I arrived in the middle of a blizzard and walked into that restaurant, and there they were sitting around the table singing those songs, wearing those shoes. Nothing had changed. And so now the government was sending me money every month, so I was moderately solvent and therefore drunk most of the time. And one day I was staggering around the campus in my usual shape, and I noticed a list on a bulletin board of people who were qualified to graduate, and my name was on the list. And that was excellent news. I thought I had another year to go. It's hard to keep track of everything, you know. So I notified my mother, the widow, of this great event. And she came north. And what a tender occasion it was to see the widow O'Keefe and her youngest child staggering around under the elms. Just it would bring tears to a stone. Some years later, after I became rich and famous, I was a trustee of that college, and I'd go to meetings. They were still talking about my mother. Just isn't that often in the state of Vermont, where a little old lady gets off a train drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning and starts a fist fight with the baggage guy. It's the kind of stuff they remember over there. Yep. So after college, the question was what to do. And my family was run by my uncles. My father died when I was 2. And I had these uncles, and they ran the family, and very Irish. And they had voted unanimously that I become a New York City policeman, which is what my father had been and my brother had been, and all of my uncles and cousins were New York City cops, except for the 2 morons that worked for the telephone company. So I told them I had received this scholarship to law school, and I'd be unemployed for the next several years. And that was received with mixed emotions. But that's what happened. I went off to law school. I didn't know anything about lawyers. We didn't have any lawyers in my neighborhood. We had cops and we had priests. We didn't need lawyers for anything. I hate to be disloyal to the profession that's made my son James a wealthy man. But I want to tell you, when I got to law school, I was in the company of the biggest collection of stiffs that had ever assembled under one roof. Oh, they were deadly. And they all had a blue suit and a pair of eyeglasses. So I got into uniform, and I got a pair of glasses. I didn't need glasses, but I got a pair of glasses. And I went on the wagon. They scare you a little bit in law school. I went on the wagon. I stopped drinking. And as a result of my not drinking except summers, when I worked in hotels and drank free, which is part of a police heritage anyhow. So because I didn't drink, I did well in law school. And when you do well in law school in New York, I was taken into a large Wall Street law firm. They hired me as sort of a resident immigrant. But it was not a total loss, however. I did learn to say, "Oh, really," instead of "no shit." Still works pretty good, huh? Oh, really? Sounds good. My superiors there determined that I should be trained as a trial lawyer. And so I was sent up to the courthouse to learn my trade, and I wasn't up there very long when I discovered all the really bright guys were across the street in the bar. So I moved my office into the bar, and I learned to drink. I learned to drink in a different way. I learned to drink in a more genteel, a more professional way. Very few members of the profession were knocking down shots and beers where anybody could find them. I sipped on scotch, a tall glass with ice, and it takes a little while, but it gets the job done. I was introduced to all of the mysteries and all of the rituals that surround the very, very dry martini. And to this evening and to this moment, my love, my affection, and my admiration for the very, very dry martini is one of the greatest cases of unrequited love the world has ever seen. I was so loyal, and it nearly killed me. It became time in my natural development that I be married. I don't know how these things work, but I met this lady who's sitting right here. When I worked in hotels in the shore, and I was a bellhop and she was a guest, and that pretty well characterizes the relationship right now. Mrs. O'Keefe, my wife, my current wife. I always call her my current wife. I find it keeps her on her toes. She's been current for 46 years. Oh, don't do that. Don't encourage that kind of stuff. And she's from a totally different background of mine. Many of you know her, met her. She's a lady, and she's from a lovely family with a father and mother, and a dog, and a fence, and nice sisters, and all very nicey nice. I will not burden you with the details of my wedding day. But I assure you that when the O'Keefes from the South Bronx got to the Westchester Country Club, they set a few records. There was only one fight. My Uncle Bernie hit a waiter. So we settled down and set up housekeeping, and Miss O'Keefe began to produce children with the regularity that is known only to the Roman Catholic. And she had, every year, had a child until she finally had 7, and such a spiritual number, she decided that was that. And after, well, you know, once the children are born, you start counting everything by the children. After the second child was born, I received a phone call from the law school, Fordham Law School in New York City, big school, old school, from the dean of that school, and I had to go see him. And he appointed me to the faculty. And I became Professor O'Keefe. How do you do? And scared the life out of me, really did. Very nervous. Very few people in my neighborhood were law professors. And so once again I decided I better stop drinking. Except this time I thought I'd just cut down. I would drink less. And actually when I drank less, I drank more. Because drinking less made me so goddamn nervous. I had to drink more so I could continue to drink less. So I didn't get fired for drinking more. I'm sure that makes sense to you. But it turned out that I was a good teacher. It worked out that way. And when I found that out, then there was no necessity to control drinking or try to. So I went back out to drink the way I drank, and I only knew the one way how to drink. My brother Billy was 4 years older than I, and my father was dead. So Billy was my big brother and my hero, and I tried to do everything just like Billy, but I couldn't. He was 6'3" and a Marine and all of that. But I tried, and I drank like Billy, and Billy drank until he fell down. Or the place went on fire, or something else. The police arrived, something happened, you know. So I went at it that way for a while, and then Mrs. O'Keefe began to talk ugly of me. Yes, she did. She did. And she said to me one time, there is something radically wrong with the way you drink. Well, she's not a lawyer. does not have the benefit of a legal education. And I'm very kind. So I would explain things to her. And I explained to her the relativity of drinking. Which is to say that some people drink more than other people. Are we all right here now with that? I thought I was going along pretty good there, and I said so. On a relative scale, I'm not such a big drinker. Matter of fact, said I don't drink as much as my mother. And she says, nobody drinks. Well, you can't stand there while they insult your mother, you know. So I go over and see Mom, we'd really do the number. Well, this drove her crazy, and she betook herself to her physician, who, as you might imagine, is an obstetrician. And he couldn't find anything the matter with her until she told him she lived with a drunk. And that explained things to him, and then he sent her home to me with a message. And I am one of the few men in Alcoholics Anonymous who comes here upon the advice of a gynecologist. The message she brought me from her obstetrician doctor was that I was an alcoholic and should stop drinking. I was a law professor. I rose to defend myself, which is my custom, and I took a very dim view of a physician who would attempt to diagnose a patient without ever seeing or laying eyes upon the patient. Shabby type of medical practice, all too common in our country today. Then I went into high gear and I asked Mrs. O'Keefe a question to which she has not yet discovered the answer. I asked her what kind of a man became an obstetrician in the first place. You got it. At this point, the conversation was coming downhill very fast. And then it happened. I don't know how this happened. It happened. I don't know how it happened. I cannot explain to you how this happened. I can explain to you many, many other things, and I probably will in the second or third hour of this terrific talk. But in the middle of it all, I suddenly stopped, and I admitted to Mrs. O'Keefe, for the first time I'd ever admitted to anyone. This is very difficult to remember. I admitted to Mrs. O'Keefe that there had been many occasions upon which I had permitted myself to be overserved. And that was about as far as I care to go. Mrs. O'Keefe is a woman of great resource. She sprang into action. And 3 days later, I was a prisoner in a mental institution in Stamford, Connecticut. And these were in happier and gentler times. There were no 28-day programs. There were no rehabilitation places. And we were without the benefit of alcoholism counselors. Happier, softer times. And I was in a real nut house. And I was only there a matter of moments when I discovered a very serious architectural deficiency in the building. There was no doorknob on my side. And there was a hole in the door, and a guy was looking. I tried to tell this and explain this to a man in a white coat who was idling about. And I very carefully explained to that cretin that on that very day was my birthday. And I had attained age 35. And I told this man, ignorant as he was, that under the Constitution of the United States of America, I was eligible for the office of president. He urged me not to plan any campaigns. He said there were 2 other presidents in residence. And he administered to me some vile narcotic and went out of my life. I never saw him again. And a little while later, I recovered from that. I sat up and came up for air. Of course, I demanded to see the head of the hospital. Of course I did. And they brought him to me. And you know that smarmy medical way they have. He says, "Tell me, Professor, why is it you drink so much?" I said, "Well, I was raised by wealthy parents. Momsy and Daddy used to travel a great deal. I was left in the hands of cruel servants who were black. And I became insecure and started to drink." He said he had heard that before. I just made it up. He's telling me he heard it before. About 15 minutes later, one of his colleagues came in and asked me the same question. So, you're not supposed to lie to a physician. I told him of my impoverished youth in the Bronx. Told him about the beatings I used to get from my mother. He even told him about the time my sister Marie stole one of my toys and I chased around the house with a knife for 3 days. He told me I'd come to the right place. Said help was at hand. Said one day, with proper care, I could drink safely again. Just like that woman in Moderate Alcoholics, huh? The one that killed the 2 people, that one. But I digress. And I was there in that place, and I was playing Monopoly most of the time with 3 other guys who were there. They weren't alcoholics, they were just there. And we played a lot of Monopoly. It's part of the Monopoly therapy for alcoholism. Played all day and half the night. And I was not drinking. And I was not thinking about drinking. I was thinking about playing Monopoly. Might work, And they told me I had a visitor. Well, I wasn't allowed to have any visitors, so I waited, wondered who this would be. And into my room came this very imposing-looking guy with a suit, a shirt, and a tie. And announced he was from Alcoholics Anonymous, Darien, Connecticut. And the hospital had given up on me. And they asked him if he would speak to me about this program. "Where are you from?" "So from Alcoholics Anonymous." I said, "What?" And I started with him. He was very rude. Well, you won't believe this. You know what this man said to me? You know what he said to me? He said this. He said, "Shut up." I immediately knew that they had neglected to tell him who I was. So I decided I would give him a little biography. And I started, he said, sit down and shut up. Well, I was not a well person, and so I sat down. And he began to tell me, as we are instructed, and as I have been trying to tell you, what he had been like, and what happened to him, and how he had come to AA, and how things were for him now. It was a very fascinating story, but not for me, of course, for him. And he said, would you like to go with me to meetings? Meetings? Meeting. What type of meetings, sir? He said, meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh, well, I don't think that would be possible. I really don't think. Where are these meetings? He said, they're outside. I said, I'll go. That's all it took. Besides that, he gave me a pack of matches, and that's good to have. And that was in 1963. And he made arrangements for me to go locally. When I got out, and I did, I started to go to meetings where I lived. I lived in Larchmont, New York. And in those happy days, the medical community was of an opinion that the disease of alcoholism was caused by some type of a Valium deficiency. And so when you were discharged from one of these places, they gave you a big jar of Valium. And the instruction was, in 1963, if you feel like a drink, have one of these. Well, I felt like a drink all the time, so I would carry them loose in my pocket and I just chew on them. And I went to these meetings, I listened to these people, and I know myself fairly well. I figured I'd come here. You would recognize me as a superior person. You would elect me your president. I was always president if I joined something. I would serve a term as your president, and there'd be some type of a retirement dinner, and I'd get some kind of a plaque that I could hang on the wall with all the other plaques. Well, it did not work out that way, as you might know. I lasted 10 months, and then I got drunk. I went 10 months without drinking, and then I drank. And I'm not going to take you through it, but believe me when I tell you, it was without question the worst period of my life. It was murder. It was pure and simple murder. I would drink a week, not drink a month. Drink a month, not drink a week. I would drink and come to the meetings. I would come to the meetings and then I would drink. I never knew when I'd be drinking or not drinking. I certainly never knew where I would be when it was over. And things began to happen to me that had never happened to me before. And these are things that I considered very important then. I don't think so much anymore. I was fired from my teaching job at the law school as a tenured professor of law. And that's unusual. I was in very, very serious, very, very serious, personal, professional, and financial difficulties. I had managed to alienate just about everybody I knew. Ms. O'Keefe was the only one who stuck with me. It was murder. It was absolute murder. And I did not think I'd be able to stop drinking. I didn't think so. Oh, I saw other people, but I just didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And this minute, I really can tell you that up to that very day, I did not think I could get sober. And on November 24, 1965, I think I had enough. I don't know what I had. But I called this man who was my sponsor. His name is John. And he came over to this place where I'd gotten a job. And boy, he looked so good. Member of AA, of course. He looked so good and I felt so bad. I asked him what I had to do to make it around here. You know that look they give you, that sponsor look? They don't blink, they're like reptiles. They just... And he said to me, don't drink. Don't drink and go to the meetings. Well, I didn't want him to tell me that. I knew that part, you know. I've been here 10 months. I heard that. I want to tell me something else. Huh? He didn't even mention my inner child. He didn't seem to care about my emotions even. I told him he didn't understand. I said, you just don't understand the real problem. The real problem is I don't have the right job. I'm in the wrong job here. I need a good job. He said, you had one. Didn't have to say that, you bastard. I said, well, at home it's worse, you know. She's really murder up there. Yeah, I said, well, you're lucky they let you up there at all. He said, come on, you're not doing anything, let's go. So he made a phone call or two, and he took me over to Grand Central, where I used to take the train back and forth to where I lived, and he put me on a train at Grand Central to Larchmont. It's about a 40-minute ride. And about halfway up, I reconsidered, you know. That's what I called him for. I must have panicked. Don't drink, right? Don't drink my ass. Wait till this train stops. And I got off the train at Larchmont, and that was my attitude. And standing on the platform of the Larchmont station was the guy who brought the mail to my house, the mailman. His name was Al. He was chairman of the local AA group. And Al looked at me and said, get in the car. I said, Al, with all respect, I don't hang out with mailmen. He said, somebody called me about you. Get in the car. I knew they were talking about me. So I got in Al's car. He took me up to the meeting. And I haven't had a drink since. It's an amazing thing, huh? Mrs. O'Keefe, who great affection for me, asked me to stop drinking a zillion times for her own sake, sake of her children. I said I would, but I could not. My boss, the dean at the law school, who was a personal friend, godfather of one of the children, told me, you're a good teacher, but we can't have you around here like that. I told him I'd stop, but I couldn't. I could not stop for money. I couldn't stop for love. And a guy who brought the mail to the house came up to me after a meeting and said, I'll pick you up tomorrow night. And I said, that'll be fine, Al. And haven't had a drink since. You suppose they train them somehow in a post office in ways that we... Does God work through mailmen? Apparently so. Apparently so. Well, after being in AA all this time, I always feel I'm obliged to give you some of my opinions. It's like the other thing, we all have some. As the book says, let me just tell you, everything's fine now. It's just hunky-dory. And, of course, I got my job back after some time. And, of course, all of my children have come to AA at one time or the other. And, of course, everybody in our family is sober at the moment. And we're all in very good space. And as we were talking before, things could not be better than they are. And I know why, and so do you. And what I've been thinking about lately is I've been very much taken with the correspondence between Bill Wilson and the great Carl Jung, the great psychiatrist, who, as you might remember, treated Roland Hazard back in the 30s for his alcoholism. It's in our book. And he said to Roland, "There's no hope for you." He said, "I've never seen an alcoholic with your mind, your kind of a mind, recover." And Roland said, "Never? My God." And Jung said, "Well, every once in a while, now and again, here or there, it is not a regular thing. People like you have some type of a religious experience." So Roland went out to find a religious experience, and he found the Oxford group, and he stopped drinking. And a little while later, his friend Ebby Thatcher got arrested in Bennington, Vermont, for shooting at a pigeon with a shotgun, and gave him the message that Jung had given him. And Ebby, as you know, came down to New York and got on the soup line at the Calvary Church, and Ebby said it just occurred to him, a voice came to him that said, "Call Bill Wilson." So he did, and Bill says in our book that his college friend called him and invited him over to Brooklyn. And he opened the door, and he said there was something funny about the old boy. And he said, "What got into you?" And Ebby said, "I've got religion." And Bill said, "Oh, God." Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot, and now he's a religious crackpot. And so Bill wrote a letter in 1960 to Jung, last year of Jung's life. And he said, "We consider you to be a founder because of the advice you gave to Roland Hazard, who brought it to Ebby, who brought it to Bill, who brought it to Bob, who brought it to the world." Got back a lovely letter from Jung. And Jung said, "I remember Roland. His problem was that he had separated himself from the whole, W-H-O-L-E. In medieval terms, he had separated himself from his union with God." So here is the greatest psychiatrist of his age, or perhaps of any age, and he analyzes the disease of alcoholism to be a separation from God. And our book says over and over again, it says, there is one who has all power, it says. May you find him now. Now, if there is one who has all power, and you separate yourself from all power, you are not so difficult, eh? And it says, and I'm not religious, believe me, I'm not religious, but this is the way it is. It says to me that God does not make hard terms with those who seek him. Is this a hard term? To be here this weekend? Is this difficult? This is terrific. To be in this beautiful place? To be with people you know, people you care for, they care for you? These are not hard terms. No one's ever asked me to do anything very difficult around here. Get to the meetings, get there on time. Try to help out, give somebody a ride, speak when you're asked to speak. Not hard terms. Not hard terms at all. And I am here, you are here, and we're all here because of the grace of God. And there's no getting around it. That's just the way it is. I hear people say they don't believe in God. Well, I don't much care about that. I had this fool in Florida who I was sponsoring, and he didn't want to say the third step prayer. He told me he was an atheist. And atheists don't say the third step prayer. told them, nobody cares that you're an atheist. We don't care what you think. There's no chapter in this book says into thinking. The book says there's a chapter called Into Action. It isn't what you think, stupid. It is what you do. And you will do the third step prayer. So I haven't seen him in a while, but I suppose, because I don't live in Florida anymore, but I suppose if he's fortunate, he's there every morning saying, I'm an atheist. I told him how to do it. I said, you just say, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any of this crap. But my sponsor is O'Keefe. And if I don't do this, he's going to give me some trouble. So I offer myself to you to do with me. And he doesn't drink. So what you believe or don't believe, alcoholics are fairly weird. You got a lot of, flat earth people around. They have lots of beliefs. It's what we do, you and I. It's what we do. And what do? We don't drink. We go to meetings. We try to help out. We thank God. We thank God every day. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't thank you all for Tom having me here, having the good judgment to ask me to. Did I say the wrong thing? Come up here. You've been very kind to me, to my wife, and my son James, his wife Margaret, and my grandchild. My grandchild's nicer looking than your grandchild, Lily. But as Tom indicated, I'm one of the speakers that goes around, and I do. And I have a way of ending, and I'm going to end now. And the first thing I do is read you this last page of our book, the last page of the text, page 164, if I can get there. And it says, you may say I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that. So you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do for the new person who still suffers. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you do not have. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. And I will consider this weekend a great event. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Clear away the wreckage of your past, admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. There is a pamphlet in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is very dear to me. I think it's our best pamphlet, certainly our best written pamphlet. It's called The Member's View of Alcoholics Anonymous. And at the very last page of that pamphlet, the author takes a biblical reference, and he recalls the time when John the Baptist was once again languishing in one of Herod's prisons. And John sent 2 of his friends to inquire of his cousin, Jesus, as to whether or not he was the Messiah. And so these 2 men found him and they walked with him. And they stopped him one day and they said, "Are you the Messiah? Are you the one we've been waiting for all these years? Or should we wait for somebody else?" And he never answered that question. But he said to these 2 men, "You go back to John and you tell John only what you have seen and only what you have heard. Tell John that the blind see and the lame walk. Tell John that the deaf can hear and that the sick are made well. And tell John that the poor have the gospel brought to them." In my early days, I was taught that the word poor in that context could mean poor in spirit. And everyone knows that the word gospel simply means good news. And so, my dear sisters and brothers, in happy convention assembled, if you will accept a report from me based on my years in Alcoholics Anonymous, I will tell you only what I have seen and only what I have heard. And based on that personal observation, it seems to me that the blind do see and the lame do walk. And I know that the deaf can hear, and most certainly the sick are made well. And I have seen over and over and over again, through the longest day and into the darkest night, the good news of this program brought to the alcoholic who suffers, the poor in spirit. God bless you.